we're here now.
Yeah, we're just figuring it out here on our end too. These past couple of weeks. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Not too bad. So I'm thinking that what we're going to do here today is just kind of go back and forth between pre-written chat questions and voice questions, if that's all right with you.
Those are my favorite two things in the world.
Perfect. For voice, I like to allow a little bit of a back and forth, but if you want to stop engaging at any point, just let us know. We want you to have a good time.
Gotcha.
So first, we have a voice question from Kyo-san that he told me about before. So I'm going to go ahead and bring him in.
G'day, Big Daddy V. How you doing?
Howdy.
So, if you don't know me, I'm Kyo-san AU. I am an Aussie streamer. I do talk about workplace organization. I'm a workplace organizer myself. Love socialism. Love your work. Just want to give a quick shout out to your gender work. You really pivotably changed my position on gender, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate a lot of the hard work you do, and I think you're an overall fantastic streamer and a fantastic addition to the space. So just before I start asking questions and stuff, just want to throw it out there. So just want to let you know.
Thank you. You've lubed me up. I'm ready for whatever comes next.
Good. All right. We're going to talk about coconuts. Is that okay?
Hit me up.
All right. So I have what I think is a pretty reasonable critique of your coconut analogy. Do you stand pretty strictly by it, or do you really care that much about it, or anything like that before I go into it?
I think it's mostly just a good way of illustrating the difference between positive and negative freedom and the implicit nature of coercion. There are like caveats that you could add to the scenario to try to account for real world variables, but I think the fundamental logic is pretty sound. Yeah.
So what I would probably say is I don't think it demonstrates necessarily what you think it demonstrates. I think when we tweak the analogy a little bit, that we start to have problems with it that tend to show it's showing something else rather than that idea of coercion. Because if it's that idea of coercion you're trying to show with it, it leads to an infinite regress. So the thing I'd point out specifically is that the initial analogy sort of showed asks for it's two people on a coconut island, right? And these two people have that interaction. So I'll just spell it out really quickly. I'm sure your chat knows, but there might be people in the voice chat who don't know. It's two people crash on a desert island. One wakes up before the other. One collects all the coconuts, and the other one needs food. There's no fish around, and he's just an inept piece of shit who can't forage for some reason. But that's fine, So he asks the guy, "Hey, can I have a couple of coconuts?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can have a couple of coconuts if you suck my dick." So people would think that that's obviously an abhorrent situation to be in, and I would be tending to agree. Now, my contention here would be that if we change certain parts about that analogy, not too much, obviously, so it's not warped beyond the point of where it's unrecognizable, but if we have something like, instead of a dude crashing on a desert island with another person who woke up and collected the coconuts, right? If we have, say, a dude crashing on a desert island, but there's already a group of people there, say some kind of commune, and they have collected the coconuts in preparation for winter, right? And they've got all their food in their winter stores. And this dude goes and asks them the same question, is that the level of coercion is going to be about the same. They're just going to ask him, "Hey, you can suck all our dicks, so you can suck my dick because I'm the coconut manager," or whatever, right? And those exchanges are still going to be the same. It doesn't seem to show coercion under capitalism. When you tweak it a little bit further, if you say there are multiple actors on the island, be those multiple communes or multiple individuals, then you have the power to bargain, and that changes significantly. Because you can have the power to bargain. Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to point out something. The coconut analogy isn't fundamentally a critique of capitalism. It's a critique of the idea that you have free association when you have needs that can only be met with things that you don't already have. That would be applicable in essentially any system. The problem that I have is that a lot of capitalists will make the argument that you have the free choice to work, that it's something that you can choose to do, that we have a system that is maximized people's individual free will. And that's what I disagree with. In reality, of course, we need things that other people have, and the system mandates we take that. But I agree. I think that, virtually any economic system would involve that kind of coercion to some extent. Yeah. I just think it's important we know that it exists.
So specifically, the thing I'd be pointing to is that the thing that adjusts that coercion, because it's realistically what I'm trying to show here is the monopoly that's the problem, whether that be a duopoly, an oligopoly, or any of these other things, right? That people hoarding the resources and having a collective, like the only ownership of those resources is the problem there, right? So the thing that I'm trying to point out here, and the thing that I was going to get to, was it seems to be that the ability to bargain and the ability to work within market systems seems to alleviate that to an extent. Now, obviously, like I mentioned before, you can have the aforementioned oligopoly and duopoly, but those are things you can capture by regulatory capture.
Well, sure. I mean, the only thing which I'm attempting to illustrate really is the fact that we aren't really given free choice when it comes to our need to participate in these systems. That's it. I mean, I agree that there are caveats that could be added to mitigate that, but that doesn't break the analogy. It only complicates it. Even if you have an incredibly complicated market system, that means there are 1,000 different ways you can sell your label to get this, that, or the other. The fact remains that there is something you need, and you can only get it by participating in a system that you may not want to participate in, which kind of destroys the idea of meaningful free association.
Okay, sick. So you'd agree that that's in any system, like including like some communist system or some like a level system, that these aren't necessarily just, obviously, like you mentioned before, just a capitalism, but the solution here would be some level of welfare floor or whatever, and some sharing of resources and some level of market engagement. Is that correct?
Yeah, it can be mitigated, certainly, with UBI or anything else like that. But when I was talking with Adam Kokesh, which was the first place that originated that meme, it was more about like understanding the fact that we don't really freely associate our way into jobs. That's the whole libertarian meme, right? That free association dictates market forces. But in reality, there isn't free association. You know, you have to work or you starve. So I was trying to illustrate it that way. I acknowledge that there would be an element of this present in almost any system that I could imagine.
Okay, sick, because literally every time I've spoken to someone about this, I raised this critique a couple of months back. I've had people hit me up pretty often about it. I'm glad to hear it from the word of the big man himself, but not so big man anymore, actually. Big congratulations to that, by the way. I'm so fucking proud of you. That's sick.
It's easy. It's easy when you can fill a home gym. Blame privilege, not my willpower. They just fucking disappear. We're not blaming my privilege.
Keto, are you still there?
Damn, privilege checked them so fucking hard they shot out of the Discord call. Jesus Christ.
All right. I guess we'll move on to.
Well, Godspeed. I was too woke.
Is my voice still working right now?
Yeah, I hear you.
All right, awesome. So we'll go ahead and just move on to a chat question, I think, then. Let me see here. I actually have a, oh god, it's a 4-part question. Let's save that for later. Here's a good one from Mud Stragava. How do you prevent democracy from becoming a popularity contest where the most popular and not the most intelligent candidates get elected? I've been thinking about why democracy is important, and I feel like the goal is to add representation of all the different groups within society. Would there be other systems that could also achieve this goal?
Yeah, I don't actually know if there's a way to do that. I think that democracy fundamentally is a popularity contest. The trick is to get people to associate popularity with virtuous characteristics, you know? I don't necessarily have anything against popularity contests if the things that make people popular are intelligence, introspection, foreign policy analysis, like stuff like that, you know? So I think the solution to this basically is education, you know? Our educational system here in the States is abysmally poor. Even the founding fathers recognized that a democracy could only really function if everyone was at base level literate, because you need to be kept up on what's taking place in order to meaningfully comment and make decisions based off of it. But beyond that, the more education falters, the more meaningless and regressive democratic participation becomes. So I don't think there is like a super easy solution, I'm afraid.
All right, right on. Next, I think we have a question from Big Princess on voice. Thomas, you unmuted?
This is a pretty easy question.
Let's see. We'll just go to another chat question, I guess, then. All right, so here's a good one. Vaush, you've been pretty consistent on supporting the right to own firearms under Marxist theory. However, the prevailing belief among leftists is that guns should be controlled by the state to some degree. Do you think there's a path forward to convince leftists that unfettered ownership of firearms is righteous or at least a necessity?
I think it really depends on where the leftists are. In America, I think most leftists are pro-gun. I think in Europe, most are anti-gun. So it seems like, if anything, the gun issue is more cultural than it is like Marxist. I know Marx was pro-gun, but like most people were pro-gun 150 years ago, I think. It seemed to be a popular position back then, you know, because everyone was off foraging for your beaver skins back in the day. For me, it's more of a cultural thing. I think that gun ownership is fine. I think there are problems that correlate with it, but I think those problems can be solved in other ways. The issue I have with the whole gun ownership discourse is that here in the US, it is politically impractical to get rid of guns, impossible even, and basically no good will come from it. There are hundreds of millions of guns in this country. In this country, I actually agree with the Republicans. If you put bans on guns, you're only going to make them, like, you're only keeping them in the hands of lawful citizens. That does decrease the risk of, say, suicides or crimes of passion against domestic partners and such, but you can make that argument for a lot of other things as well, and it seems like the political backlash to any effort along those lines might not be worth, you know, the actual like political capital that you take to expend it. God, getting rid of guns in this country, I mean, that would be like an unfathomable, overwhelming task. I mean, you would burn through any possibility of bipartisan support for a century after that, you know, like you would just completely destroy. Americans like their guns. It's culturally important to them. So since getting rid of them is politically inefficacious, let's focus on the things that we can change. Stuff like mental health or cultural affects concerning guns in media and how we treat masculinity. And we can make support networks for domestic abuse victims more available, because a lot of gun murders are done to people in partner violence and like stuff like that. You know, I think we can focus on stuff like that, and it's good, it's effective, it's meaningful. But I just don't know what people are talking about when they talk about gun bans. I mean, where the hell do you think that political capital is going to come from? Very unlikely, you know?
Sounds good. Next, I think we have a question from Daffy Hat and Voice. Unmute.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Hi. I kind of wanted to ask you about like a climate change, because I know that you talk about that, or well, not really talk about that a lot on your stream, which is kind of why I'm asking the question. With like the recent like climate report that's come out, it's kind of hard not to doomer a little bit about it. I'm not entirely sure how. I don't know. What's your take on like climate change? Like, how do you like?
I think it's bad.
Well, yeah. But like, what can people really do about it, or like stop from doomering, I guess?
I mean, whether or not you're going to doomer, that's a psychological problem, not a material one. Some people doomer in the face of nothing, and other people remain optimistic when everything is going to shit. I can't really help with the doomerism stuff. What you should focus on is some perspective and a pragmatic understanding of things that can be done. A lot of people seem to think of this as like an imminent doomsday scenario, but in all likelihood, what we're really talking about is degrees of disastership. And I really do think that if you look at it in that way, I don't know what that voice bit was, chat. If you look at it in that way, you stop thinking of it as we've run out of time to prevent the end of the world, and you start thinking of it as what can we do to like continue to slow the wheels. I'm not that not that educated
with climate change, like trying to cope with the new world.
Well, there have been so many periods of time during which people thought the world was ending, and sometimes they got pretty damn close. You know, people have survived ethnic cleansing and genocide. We survived the Black Plague. disease wiped through the entirety of the Americas and killed millions and millions of Native Americans. And things can get really bad. But for the most part, the species seems to kicking on, you know? Focus on that. And with that in mind, with your perspective reshifted somewhat, I'm not that familiar with what we as individuals can do, but broadly, just approach the whole situation. Just don't do the doomer shit, okay? The doomer shit is exactly what they want you to do, okay? They go immediately from climate denialism to climate doomerism. So they never have to do anything. It's like it doesn't exist, and then they immediately switch over. To, well, there's nothing we can do, and both of those mind states prevent them from having to take any responsibility. So yeah,
that makes sense.
It's not good. It's not good.
Nah. Well, anyway, have a good day.
Oh, thank you. You as well.
All right. Next, I think Bing Princess, are you going to try again with your mic now?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Howdy.
Hi. Oh, I would just want to start off about of like, I'm a leftist. Yeah, I don't really have an economic position. Don't really care that much. But I do critique the left often because I do think that having critiques for good things is always a good thing. So this is more like generally speaking. So my question is, can I like pull up, please? Okay. So, do you feel like the left has a toxic relation with academia?
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next one is, do you believe that POC are more prone to radicalization more than the right?
No, not at all. I don't think. Certainly, I mean, they're more prone to left radicalization than the right, but just flatly radicalization, no, I don't think so.
Okay. I beg to differ, but to left radicalization, 100%.
Well, I'm just a whitey, you know, so my perspective on this is limited. Can I clarify something on the academia discourse real quick?
Yeah, definitely.
The main problem that I have with it is that there are a lot of leftists who like to borrow academic terms and academic definitions with no understanding of academic theory. I've noticed this a lot lately with, say, for example, decolonization discourse, where people who have no fucking clue how any sociological analysis takes place or how to address any of the broader like political or geopolitical like problems associated with colonization, they nonetheless act with an unbelievable degree of arrogance because they know like the terms and the definitions that academics use. But that's not enough. You know that saying, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing? That's meant literally, as in only having a little knowledge on a topic is very dangerous because it gives you the Dunning-Kruger effect. You know, you feel very confident about it, but your confidence leads you right off a cliffside.
I think the only thing that I have contention with when it comes on to the whole academia thing is that for me personally, and I think this should be a very general idea abroad, people who are in academia are not of a higher class. People who are in academia are just regular people. They just are academic. So when I see people who like glorify a historical figure or a person who make theory, it doesn't necessarily make sense to me, because if you're a leftist, I would, generally speaking, would see that you don't like hierarchy, and that kind of puts you in like a place of being lower than or included in that specific like hierarchical level, if that makes sense.
Well, I don't have anything.
My
Hierarchy of expertise is one of the few justifiable hierarchies. I have nothing against deferring to the expertise of people who have spent their life educating themselves on a subject. There's sometimes, you know, people do turn it into like a thought-terminating cliche, where the moment academia is cited, their brain turns off. Like it's just they sort of turn into the fallacious appeal to authority. But apart from that, I think that I think it's generally good to respect the academia on these subjects. You know, I certainly don't think it hurts. The average academic probably has a much better opinion on, say, sociological analysis or Black Lives Matter or police, you know, brutality than the average non-academic.
No, like, I'm not necessarily saying that. It's more so of like, these people aren't like the evolved version of like humans. Like their brain and IQ levels are so out of this world. Like they're Einsteins to the point where a common person isn't going to understand any concepts. That's not true. Because like for me, like
you're educated on it.
Like education is one thing, but they're like intellectual power is different. If that makes sense, like it's not your brain power type thing. That's not what it is.
Oh, sure, but I don't think that like I'm not really looking for intelligence when I talk to people, right? There are lots of smart people who are stupid as fuck. It's really about what you know and how you apply it. There are tons of really, really intelligent people who are incredibly arrogant, never waste any time educating themselves on a topic, and just blurt out stupid shit because they have to feed their ego. Not self-reporting here, of course. And then there are lots of people who maybe aren't that bright, like genetically, but they have a good work ethic and they're disciplined and they're introspective and they're able to gain a much better understanding of those subjects. So it's not about intelligence to me. It's just about, you know, how much time have you spent learning about it?
Yeah, definitely. I think the only last thing that I would say for LE is that I think it's very important to talk about how social and cultural things are perceived. That's really one of the reasons why I asked about the radicalization thing, because if you are of a marginalized group, it's very easy to get radicalized to the left. Is that a bad thing? No, but I think it's also a thing that should be understood when it comes on to leftism, since there's so many sections within it. That's just what I was trying to say. That's about it.
Well, I definitely agree that marginalized groups are more likely to move to the left, generally. I suppose with how radical left they are, I'm not really sure. It seems like a lot of the most radically left people here in America active today are like white, you know? Because it seems like a lot of radicalized like minority groups are more interested in immediate reform or in finding ways to mend real systemic problems. And then you have these like very insular kinds of radicalization that I guess I associate with white people, where they're more interested in like the communist utopia. They don't really engage that much in like actual politics or actual analysis. And yeah, so I don't know. I guess it depends on what you mean by radicalization.
Yeah, definitely. I have to do. I'm not even a popular figure. I don't even know if I was going to say if you know me. That's so gross. But basically, for what I have to do for research is very often that you will see for specifically for Black history, that when it comes on to like quote unquote like radicals, they are often very like on the left what it would be on today. So like it's kind of weird because of how like circumstances can pressure someone to go further left or further right. And I think that's a very important power dynamic that we should be talking about. I think it contributes to understanding how society is now and understanding that when we not even necessarily like stop radicalizing to the right, but we kind of sort of stagger it from the left because there's no purpose in being like extremely left if your conditions are right, ? They're not enough, but steady, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm very bad at talking, so please forgive me. But yeah.
Not at all. I'll ponder that last one. I might need to reflect on it a little bit to fully understand. But yeah, altogether, I think we can agree left is best, ACAB, fuck 12, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely.
There we go.
Okay, so that's my beat. Later.
You got along. Thank you, Pink. Okay, so I'm gonna. Hey, Vaush, it's Sonia, by the way.
Howdy.
Hey. Okay, so one quick thing just to mention for the mods that are listening. Mods aren't able to raise their hands, so if you have questions, just let one of us know in mod chat or DMs, and you can jump in at a certain point and become a speaker. Anyways, so Vaush, I have a 2-part question with a little bit of a preamble for you.
Hit me up.
Okay. Those of us who have been watching you since your first streams have gotten to witness you gradually evolving over the past 2.5 years in near real time. But for those who have either only seen clips of you or have bailed out at the first sign of conflict or have come to know you later in your career, you may appear to be immutable in some of your positions. My questions for you are as follows. 1, what would you say are your 3 top positions that you have evolved away from since you began streaming? And 2, would you ever consider listing out all of your most notable positions you have moved on and then do a debunking your past self type stream on those positions?
Yeah. Okay. I'll answer the second one first because it's easier to. And the answer is, yeah, that's good content. For sure. To the first one, the top 3 things that I've moved over on. Okay. I think the biggest thing that I've moved over on is the efficacy and worthwhileness of retaliatory action against oppressors by the oppressed. I recently had a debate about this. If you go back like 2 years, I was full on like Hamas, whatever, they're fighting Israel. Okay. Yeah, Palestine, Israel, whatever, the Native Americans, non-Native Americans, whatever, dude, colonizers, shit like that, that was an attitude I had towards a lot of stuff. And I think I don't anymore. I think I really initially misunderstood this, how easy it is for people who are on the left to fall into reactionary tendencies when they're opposing oppressive structures, or to put it another way, opposing the people at the top of the oppressive structure and opposing the structure itself are 2 different things. Yeah, I don't think I really appreciated that to begin with, so I had to move over on that. The second thing, I used to be, I think I used to be more white-pilled on the potential for like brown-red action. The idea that like people on the left and the right could work together towards shared economic goals. I feel like time has really blunted my ability to feel enthusiastic about that. It feels like now there's just no, it really seems like every single attempt to try to unite left and right interests has either been like internet only, or it's been completely disingenuous and framed by the right as a way of promoting the right to the left. So that's another one. And then I think the third one would probably be, fuck. Let me think for a second. There are a few things that I've changed my mind on. I guess, yeah, I think I know what the third one is. I actually, at this point, think it's kind of counterproductive for leftists to talk about anything beyond socialism. When we start, like, all I see when communism and anarchism come up online, and I don't mean the processes of achieving these things, I mean like the end state utopian goals. All it seems to do is incite bitter infighting. I'm being real about this. In theory, I have nothing against people going hardcore with the theory crafting. I think that's really, really great. But like in practice, it really just seems to be a vortex people get consumed by. And they have like no engagement with reality anymore, I like the discussion of the ideas, but it feels like you're almost sacrificing activists to like this whirlpool, Again, if a person can manage to have strong opinions on post-socialist or post-state societies and also live in the real world, then they're totally fine. They're totally okay. I support them and respect and value them. It just seems like a lot of people like retreating into the comforting void of hypothetical utopianism because it's way, way, way easier to manage than the constant disappointments and setbacks of real-world advocacy.
All right, very cool. Thank you for answering those. One last thing. It is Catboy Kaio's birthday. If you wouldn't mind saying happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Catboy Kaio.
I'm going to hand back over to Spectre now. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Daniel. Next, I think we have Carl. Do you want to ask your nuclear question?
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Vaush, I love that you covered both climate change and you had Zonia quiz you on your changes of heart. And I think I've seen you had a change of heart from against nuclear energy to for nuclear energy for various reasons. Now, I am a leftist nuclear climate activist, and considering the number of plants at risk right now because of cheap natural gas and high labor costs, I hope you're in favor of at least some action to keep our existing American nuclear plants online. Unfortunately, these corporations, First Energy and Exelon, are really corrupt. So I'm personally in favor of using eminent domain to take these plants away from the fossil fuel corporations that use them as a bargaining chip. But paying ransom essentially to these capitalists seems to be the direction that Biden is headed. What are your thoughts?
Oh, well, I mean, Biden, if Biden would ever use eminent domain to seize like massive chunks of energy infrastructure, that'd be a little out of character for him. So I can't say I'm too surprised. I get back and forth on this all the time. I feel like every other time I talk to somebody, they have a different opinion on whether or not we should invest in nuclear energy. And a lot of people that I talk to say that there's nothing wrong with nuclear energy. It's just that it takes a long time to set up new plants, which means that it's no longer like an effective or operative way of supplementing our energy production on the time scale that we need to work on in order to prevent the worst climate change disasters. Like it takes a while to get them set up because you've got to build it and there's so much that goes into it. So some people say we should just spend everything on other types of green energy because it's more immediately effective. I'll say this much: we should keep these plants open, the nuclear power plants, and I wish we had built more back when we could have. I guess I'm not too certain as to whether or not their new construction would be that effective today.
Well, let me do a really quick persuasion then, and that was my open question, and you gave me a slight answer. So I think that if we had a Green New Deal level of effort into building new nuclear, it would work fantastically. And that doesn't mean that we're excluding renewable energies, and I'm personally in favor of expanding those because they're the quickest way of keeping fossil fuels in the ground in the short term. But in the long term, they simply will not replace fossil fuels. And the metric that I like to use is a battery is never going to get better than 1 kilowatt hour per liter. And you can do the math on that and figure out just how enormous and how much physical materials it's going to take to do energy storage. So that's sort of my pitch.
Yeah, I have heard that. The real problem with renewable energy is that it seems like we're running up against like the atomic limit of energy storage. That is an issue. Some people have talked to me about like thorium solutions to that. I can't really speak to the specifics of that necessarily, but yeah, I don't know. Interested, it seems like I know we should probably just put trillions into this either way, right? I mean, we should. This is a problem severe enough that we could probably morally justify throwing an ungodly amount of money into it. So, I mean, maybe we can just do both and see what sticks. Absolutely. And if you're at all interested, I know a nuclear PhD working in the field, and he would definitely be available for an AMA with you at any time. Yeah, it's really that battery stuff that gets to me. I didn't actually realize how that worked when I was younger, I always just kind of assumed that like the way I thought it worked was that like power plants are batteries, and that when you turn on a light in your house, you just kind of like ping the nearest plant and it just kind of borrows some electricity. But of course not. In reality, natural gas and coal are constantly cycling turbines, and just power just gets pumped into the grid always and always. And a lot of it just goes to waste because nobody takes it when it's there, But with energy that comes from like solar, it only works when it's daytime, and with wind only when it's windy. So yeah, it's just really weird stuff. I don't know. Maybe we just need like magic batteries. Yep, that'd solve it. All right, thanks for the answers. That's my solution. That's magic. That's what I'm sort of final answer. Based as always.
All right. Next, we have a written question from Thano. Do you believe U.S. military intervention is inherently harmful? If so, is that inherent harm ever preferable to the alternative potential humanitarian concerns of a more isolationist foreign policy? I'm pretty sure they're referencing Afghanistan, for example, here. Nah, I could never say anything is inherently harmful.
I think that it tends to be harmful, but it's entirely conceivable to me that U.S. military intervention could be for good. I mean, we did it with Rojava, didn't we? You know, in Syria, that was pretty good. Working with them to kill ISIS. I think that's highly defensible. There's potential good to be done there. The real problem is that America's priorities when it comes to military intervention are totally fucked. What we really need is a population more educated on foreign policy, so they have the ability to meaningfully prompt U.S. politicians to act better, you know? Because the thing is, politicians just want to get reelected, right? You got W after 9/11. If he can convince the whole world that, oh yeah, Saddam Hussein, Iraq, WMD, yada, yada, they go on in there, his approval rating skyrocketed after all that, you know, they went up. But if you had a population that looked at war more realistically, maybe presidents wouldn't be willing to do that shit because they know that it would keep them from getting reelected. There's a reason why America's population is so much more gung-ho about war. Remember when France wouldn't follow us into Iraq and we renamed shit Freedom Fries, you know, Freedom Toast? They were evidently quite a bit more, you know, conscientious than we were when it came to military intervention.
All right. Next, I think we have Daffy Hat. Do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Hi again. I actually had another question, which is, I think, from your earlier days when you were a very, well, I guess you are like very anti-ML now. Yeah. But like in your earlier days, I remember that you were a lot more favorable to things like the Soviet Union and China. And I'm not like, you know, a tank or anything, but you came across, like you said, there are no good MLs, and I don't know. Do we mean like modern MLs? Because I remember that you were favorable towards movements like the Black Panther movement, or the movement, but yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, the problem I have with it is it seems like, so Marxism-Leninism is ideologically incomprehensible. There are tons of different groups and tons of different governments that have applied it, and they all do different things and say different things and often fight with each other. So I don't necessarily know if there's like some core moral rot at the heart of it. But it seems like when people associate with these labels, they tend to be pretty goddamn disagreeable. And it's not to say that I agree with everything the Black Panther Party did or said either. I do think there were elements of the Black Panther Party that were just wholly counterproductive. Rhetorical elements that they used to, you know, build anger and resentment within their ranks. That ended up making them insular, counterproductive, and incapable of rationally analyzing the political situations they found themselves in. Altogether, I think it was a great group with great people, but nothing's perfect. Nowadays, though, like, man, every time I see anything ML related online, it's so deranged, you know?
I agree, by the way. Like, I'm not like a Marxist Leninist or anyone who associates with them. I just kind of find it harder to I don't know, defend things like the Black Panther Party. I think they're party, or like I don't know, like other MLs through history, or whatever.
Defend what they did. Defend what they pushed for. Okay, let's assume something that I think is reasonable, which is that the Black Panther Party members, much like every other human to have ever lived, probably had some pretty dumb moments. Maybe they call themselves Maoists. What? They borrow the decolonial element of it. They borrow the Black nationalist element of it. Whatever they thought they were taking from that, they were clearly a hell of a lot more productive to American political discourse than modern Maoists are. So I think we should focus on their actions. The Black Panther Party may have called themselves Maoists, but they spent their time organizing, not denying the Uyghur Muslim genocide, which modern Maoists do. So
yeah, that's normally like the angle I go for. I just kind of find it hard to like I get like caught up on like trying to either like point focus towards the things that they actually did, or try to like defend off their like ideological associations. Like, I'm pretty sure a lot of the people from like the Black Panther Party were like avid Stalinists or like Stalin supporters, which is also like another thing which I don't agree with, and I don't really want to defend.
Agree with that. Even Chomsky's had pretty yikes moments when it comes to the support for other governments. Like, there's somebody in chat saying that actually Maoists hate the modern Chinese government and its Dengists.
I don't know what a Maoist is.
Online, there's no difference. That's the problem. Much like Marxism, Leninism, Maoism is just this gigantic, blurry, ideologically indistinct mass of people. There are Maoist groups, like, say, for example, in India and in the developing world, that are more principled. But like I'm saying, I operate online, and the people I see who call themselves Maoists or MLs or whatever the fuck else are just, well, they're anti-American. That seems to be the only consistent ideology.
That is literally the entire focal point of their ideology.
Yeah, how do you end up defending Assad as a Maoist? How exactly?
Because Assad is anti-America.
Yeah, where those cogs line up together, you know? Yeah.
Like, yeah, I used to be like you really got me into like debate and stuff. Like, I discovered you like after the pandemic started, like right after, and I had a lot of time inside, obviously. And I've really been all over the place, and I really like talking with like other tankies and stuff, especially like, you know, the Joker guy when you're playing Bloodborne.
Yeah,
I actually found the server he was in, and it was like this weird mishmash of Maoists, MLs, whatever a Dengist is, and they all agreed on the exact same thing, but they got like rabid with each other whenever they like didn't call themselves what they wanted to be called. It was really weird.
Yeah, it's their like neo-pronouns. No, but it really is like a bunch of, I don't know, 14-year-old Tumblr users arguing over which ship is best in Ruby, you know? I mean, the attitudes they take towards this, it's about labeling and identity and in-group. It has nothing to do with the ideology underlying it. Ideology? What? Who call people?
They don't really seem to have an ideology.
And then defend China, modern China. Like, wait, it's incomprehensible if you assess it from an ideological perspective. It's entirely in-group, out-group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, the
circle jerking now. Yeah.
But yeah. Also, I just want to say one more thing before I go. That like the Joker guy, he was just as crazy in person. I thought that, like, I don't know, you were like making him mad or something, so that's why I flipped out. But no, he's very interesting.
I'm happy to hear it's a holistic problem with him.
Yeah, I was gonna ask more earlier, but I got nervous, so I kind of left. But they were nice enough to let me back on.
It was nice of them. Ain't nothing.
Yeah.
All right. Before we have our next question, just to remind everybody, if you would like to get in line, we've got about another hour here. You can join the Twitch Politics Discord, come to the stage, and request to become a speaker. We'll go ahead and pull you up. Anyway, Dark Eyes, if you'd like to unmute, you can go ahead and have your question.
Hello? Am I on? Can you hear me?
Howdy.
All right. So, Vaush, you've talked in the past about sort of the, I guess, misconception that socialism is collectivist more so than it is individualist.
Yeah.
And I'm currently taking a political economy class, and in the class they are kind of, I guess, perpetuating that idea. Although we don't call it collectivist, we call it like community focus as opposed to individual focus. Mm-hmm. And it's been kind of strange in class trying to describe why I feel it's more individualist, because I feel like a lot of the points about it being more community focused, where you have the sort of collective ownership of the means of production and stuff like that, and trying to reconcile that with how it's still individualist in that way.
Yeah, well, I think it's individualist in the same way that democracy entitles us to a collective ownership of the means of political power seeking, you know? Like, just because something is accessible to everyone doesn't mean that it's collectivist. If anything, it's being distributed to everyone so that everyone has fair and equal participation in that system. I mean, would you argue that like a monarchy is more individualist than a democracy because everyone is equally disallowed from participating in political systems? Like, no, of course not. Socialism fundamentally is about freedom, no matter what people online may claim it is, at least by the Marxian sense it is. And freedom maximizes the individual's right to do whatever the shit they like, as long as it's not hurting other people. But capitalism mandates that your economic freedoms are curtailed by the much more powerful interests of a small group of bourgeois monarchy mandates that you are sort of broken into the collective will of the aristocracy, and reactionary thought is highly collectivist. Oh my God. Nationalism is incredibly collectivist. Religion, depending on the religion, but modern monotheistic organized religion is incredibly collectivist. These things teach you to prioritize some kind of shared identity above your own personal self-actualization. So yeah, people misuse the distinctions between these terms all the time. And I guess there are different definitions, but I am very comfortable saying that a socialist utopia would be quite a bit more individualistic than any fascist state you could ever imagine.
Yeah, it is also strange because one of the other perspectives that we go over is what we call the conservative perspective. And we also define that as being community or collectivist focused. The only difference is that it's on the other end of the hierarchy spectrum from socialism. Yeah. And it's just one of the ways I've tried to explain it in class is that while there are these means of, I guess, collectivist action in socialism, it's more so that the collectivist action is to encourage people to be more individualist and give them more autonomy and freedom in sort of their material means.
Yeah, I mean, is it collectivist to have like public education so everyone has the ability to, educate themselves? I don't think so. Fundamentally, the more tools you give the individual to live a free life, the more individualism you're supporting functionally.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for answering my question.
Of course.
All right. You have.
All right.
Goodbye. Fucking 1984. That one.
Yeah. All right. Celine, if you want to go ahead and unmute, we can go ahead and take your question next.
Hey, yeah. Hi, everybody. Hi, Vaush. Hi, chat. How's everybody doing? How are you, Vaush?
Howdy. Hey, you're the person who's on Twitter.
Yeah, I'm the artist formerly known as GirlBossMarci. You might recognize my angelic voice. I just had a couple of questions to ask you today.
Hit
for
me
starters, up. All right, so you've become something of a boogeyman to a lot of people on Twitter and on YouTube and on Twitch. I'm just wondering, like, has that impacted your life outside of work at all? Like, is it a different emotional state to go to bed every night and like think in the back of your mind, like somewhere someone is looking at the same moon as me and just seething about me and just like cursing my name? Is that interesting emotionally?
Yeah, I think about it pretty often. I don't know if it affects my emotional state that much because it's counterbalanced by the solid knowledge that at any given point in time, there are probably thousands of people watching videos of mine. That's actually probably a realistic assessment. If you take a look at the average watch time of a video and multiply that by the average amount of views you get in that time period, it's usually going to be more positive than negative. It is kind of funny to think about it, because like when I'm eating like chicken nuggets and like, I don't know, watching a Vsauce video, it's just funny to think that like at that time people are furious at me, like while I'm eating
the human
nuggies.
Brain is really like wired to conceptualize that many people being like angry at you, or honestly, like even knowing about you is something that's interesting to me. But like being angry at you specifically is interesting because like you're just going about your day, you're taking a shower, you're walking your dog, whatever. You don't have a dog, and then you get home and you're like, oh, I have over 100 notifications of people who have been like screaming at me with my back turned. It's interesting to me. I don't know.
It was weird, especially since they're usually mad at me for something I didn't do, Like this most recent discourse, it's like usually it's people are angry at me for something that does not even correlate.
To be fair, you did literally call her Hitler and accuse her of killing 6 million people. So to be fair.
Yeah, it's true, discredit where discredit's due, I suppose.
Okay, my second question is, in the past, you've said some controversial statements, right? You agree with that, right? You're a controversial guy. All right. Yeah, be humble, okay? But chief among them, in my opinion, is your ridiculous claim that Banjo-Kazooie is better than its sequel, Banjo-Tooie. Do you stand by this? And if so, does it hurt to be so wrong?
The honest answer to that question is that while I've played Banjo-Kazooie very recently, I actually haven't played Banjo-Tooie since I was like 10. Can I get back to that after I play it on stream sometime? I think that'd be fun.
Sure. Next time you do an AMA, if it's post Banjo Tooie exposure, I'll come back and I'll grill you about it then. But when you said that on stream during the charity stream, at first I supported Palestine and their fight against oppression, but I don't know after that.
I'll try to keep my opinions to myself during the Planned Parenthood stream, the Vaush PP stream, as it'll be known on Twitter.
I like that. That's perfect. All right. Well, have fun burning villages. Oh, do you really quick? Do you have anything to say to the victims of VTSD, the final stage of VDS?
VTSD. Oh, yeah.
Traumatic stress disorder.
You posted that tweet, right? The hiding in my post Vaush bunker or something. What was that fucking
what
name
if
you
we
tweeted?
What if we kissed in the Vaush survivor shelter?
Oh God. Yeah, it was Corvidae. That was the person who got mega ratioed for saying it was ableist to tell people to touch grass.
Well,
oh my God.
Corvidae has a history. I feel like every time there's like a moderately successful Twitch streamer who gets canceled in any way, Corvidae has to show up and like make it about them. It's great.
Oh, Corvidae is like unironically an abuser. The behavioral pattern is like the picture perfect like epitome of a cry bully. Somebody who's horribly abusive towards other people, but the nanosecond anything even remotely touches them, they freak out and spend the next 6 days panicking over it. It's bad. It's bad, but keep in mind, nobody could ever be as miserable as them. So I wouldn't.
He's the touch grasses ableist guy. It's that dude. Yeah.
You can never be as upset or miserable as this person is. So I wouldn't don't get too steamed over them. It's a pretty funny meme though.
Oh no, yeah, of course. Personally, I think it's iconic to be that mad all the time. Like it's a look, all right.
They're a legend. Oh yeah, 100%. You know, they'll die and go to Valhalla.
I've had a couple of like cokehead relatives who I would like call them and they would be on coke and they'd just be like fuming angry and I'd be like, "What are you angry about?" And they'd be like, "I don't actually know." And I feel like I just imagine that state at all times without drugs. It's beautiful. It must be like a bliss.
It's emotional purity.
I've wasted too much time here. I'll see you guys later.
All right. Next, we have LSP. If you want to go ahead and unmute, you can go into your question.
Hi, Vaush. How are you doing?
Howdy.
Been a while since we've spoken.
Yeah, it has been a little while. How you been?
I'm being eaten alive by mosquitoes, and I'm drowned in work. How are you?
Well, neither of those things are happening to me, so I guess better than you?
Yeah. You also make a lot more money than I do, so way to rub that in.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know what your job is. We can't say.
I know what my job is. You make a lot more than I do. Okay, I don't want to take up, because I see there's a lot of people, and I want to be very, I want to spread the wealth, right? There's two possible questions I want to ask, and I'd rather just ask one of them and see which one you'd prefer to answer. But one is, with you ceding the necessity of liberal free trade to assist third world development, in what way are you meaningfully different as an anarcho-syndicalist from any other liberal in terms of trade policies? And is it possible for the first world to trade with the third world without it being exploitive? That's question one. Question two. Leftist foreign policy intervention seems to be do nothing in the face of fascism. Fascism today manifests in many forms, including Islamic extremism. If you support the withdrawal from Afghanistan, leaving the country to the Taliban, in what way are you functionally being anti-fascist? Does leaving the third world to the mercy of terrorists betray anti-fascism as a practice?
Jesus, honestly, I'm good for either one, whichever one you want to hear answered more.
Okay, I'm going to take myself on voice activity. I really am interested in your foreign policy takes. So I seem to be like in the minority of people who call themselves an anti-fascist, who believes in the principles of anti-fascism, who is ardently opposed to leaving Afghanistan. And it seems everybody else is fully willing, with full knowledge of what the repercussions of leaving Afghanistan will be, is all fully willing to leave Afghanistan. So where do we stand on this?
Well, I guess for me, the main problem is that I've just been completely blackpilled on the possibility of our continued occupation achieving anything positive, you know? It's like when you bury the knife in somebody's back, eventually you do have to take it out. When you take it out, it's going to suck. It's just, I feel like, I mean, you can take it out now or 20 years later. While we were in Afghanistan, life was better for Afghans than it will be now under the Taliban.
I don't understand why you would be blackpilled. If life is better and we can see it's better and they have their first democratic election in their history because of us, Why would you be blackpilled about that?
Because I think that it's a house of cards with a storm brewing. I think that there are a lot of domestic problems in the U.S. that are going to attract a lot of our political time and attention, and that our permanent occupation of Afghanistan, when I say permanent, I literally mean permanent, like we can't stay there forever, wasn't really a viable solution. It seems like we weren't building anything that could last without us, and it also seemed like our occupation in the region was really, really good marketing for the Taliban. Like we have utterly failed in our war on terror, and a lot of what we're fighting now, like we've been doing it for so long that we're killing ISIS members who were young enough that they weren't alive during 9/11. They got radicalized because they're the relatives of the people who died from when we attacked. Like it's like this insanely reciprocal, like infinite process. And I feel like past a point, we have to like go soft power instead of hard power, because the way we're handling it right now, it just seems like we were letting a wound fester.
The soft power feels like it doesn't really have any meaning unless you have hard power to back it up. You're not really addressing what I'm asking. Like, if you know the Taliban are fascist and you're just blackpilled, like, are we just okay with fascism then? And we're only anti-fascist, softly. If I might, when it comes to the security of Taiwan, when it comes to security of Korea, we don't say, well, 20 years is too much for them. And we don't argue, well, this is an indefinite occupation, it needs to end.
Wait, I do. I think we spend a ton of money in the military bases that we keep in South Korea, in Japan, and Germany. I'm very much in favor of us pulling out of there as well, at least to a large extent.
These are security agreements we have with these nations for their security. They want us there.
We
Same
can
with the
negotiate
Afghan government. Well, we negotiated with the Afghan government, and then we just backstabbed them and negotiated with the Taliban. Like, this seems to betray the any semblance of anti-fascism.
Wait, hold on. I didn't negotiate with the Taliban. That was
no.
I didn't
we as in Trump. I'm sorry. We as in America. Excuse me.
Well, I agree. Trump is not an anti-fascist. I'm willing to bite that bullet.
But he seems to be aligned on the solutions with many supposed anti-fascists.
Yeah, because I think that many anti-fascists, along with myself, first of all, I don't necessarily know how much of a correlation there is between being anti-fascist in a sort of domestic national security sense and like geopolitically in a U.S. humanitarian interventionist sense. I don't know how well those overlap exactly, but
I would argue. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I would say that. I mean, the reason why is I think that what's happening right now in Afghanistan would have happened anyway. We can push it down the line, but we couldn't prevent it. It seemed like we couldn't prevent it.
This feels like the same logic as like you could, murders are going to happen anyway, so why have police, right? No matter what, like the police, people are still going to murder. This isn't. So when you say you don't see an overlap between Afghanistan's when a domestic anti-fascism with a foreign policy of humanitarian intervention, I'm wondering, would you? So if you're hypothetically Vaush in 1935 U.S., would you have pursued appeasement for Hitler or any of the European fascists then, of which the anti-fascist movements were born?
Do you think that's comparable?
I do. I really do. Yes, I think that the Taliban's treatment of people is comparable to that of the Nazis.
I'm not going to deny that the Taliban and the Nazis are both fascists, and that's really, really bad. The difference is that when it came to the Nazis, the solution to their expansionist behavior was invasion, which we did, and we committed to it too,
Whereas if they didn't invade, would that change your attitude about removing them any? Would we just appease them?
Well,
I mean, not appease them, but let them sit as the government.
I don't think that appeasement works.
What I'm saying is, if assuming Adolf Hitler never invades anybody,
the logic.
Understand.
I'm trying to infer the point that you're getting at, and it seems to me like you're suggesting the United States should militarily invade every fascist country on Earth.
It depends on how feasible it is, but I don't see anything wrong with regime changing fascist nations. I think that's part of being anti-fascist.
We regime change nations into fascists for the better part of the last century.
We did not regime change Afghanistan into a fascist nation. We regime changed them into a democracy. We left them to fascists.
We propped up a facsimile of a democracy made with toothpicks and gum. I don't think that
facsimile of democracy is preferable to the fascist Taliban. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Yeah, but it's possible that something more could be built. I just don't think that our occupation was working, especially because our presence there seemed to exacerbate recruiting. I mean, what's a better like recruitment strategy for future Taliban or ISIS or Al Qaeda members than the fact that the US essentially owns your country and maintains a few thousand troops strong garrisons so that they can continue to completely control your government? I mean, it's pretty black-pilled, right?
Well, I'm not as black-pilled as you, but even if I see that this is truly pointless endeavor, what is the solution then to being anti-fascist against the Taliban? What do you do?
I do not think this is something that we can solve with military force. The problems that they have in Afghanistan aren't like the problems that. I'm sorry, 1 second. For some reason, Vermin let a cat in here, and then the cat. Pigeon, why? Why, Pigeon?
This is called the feline deflection, audience. This is the feline deflection in action.
God, she's annoying. Okay, sorry. Hello.
The feline deflection.
Yeah, it's a popular strategy.
Debate tactic. Yep.
Okay. The issue is that I don't think the situations are necessarily alike. The problem that we had with Nazi Germany was that was the government. The Nazis weren't some insurgent force brewing off in the mountainside. They were an organized government with one leader and a cult of personality sustained through the apparatus of a modern nation state. The Taliban aren't like that. You can invade a country and destroy a government, but every time we fought back against the Taliban, like a bouncy ball, they would just sort of coagulate and recede and retract and grow again. It seemed like that spark of rebellion, that underlying Islamo-fascist tendency, isn't something that we can expel from the country with military force. It doesn't, like, we've been trying it. It just doesn't seem to be working. It's just going to swamp to and fro. And maybe we build a democracy that lasts a few years after we go, but there's something underlying it that I don't think we're solving with our occupation. It just seems like we're kicking the can down the road. But maybe by getting this over with, we can highlight internal antagonisms within Afghanistan and the Taliban, which can allow a more naturalistic a more, how would you say, a more holistic rejection of the Taliban's doctrine. Or maybe they run the country so poorly that in a couple of years, popular opinion will turn against them so severely that they won't be able to recruit anymore. And then
I don't feel like we don't have a basis to say that. Popular opinion didn't turn against them at any point when they actually held the government. They held it by force.
Yeah. So what do we do?
Well, that was the question I had asked you. What is the solution? If you agree that the Taliban are anti-fascist, what is the solution?
We're the solution. I don't think America
we're not
can
the solution.
solve all these problems.
What is the solution? If we're not the solution, what is the solution?
I think the solution is to wait and see how the political dynamics in that country evolve with time. I mean, if you want, we can invade them again and sort of push back the wave further and wait another 10 or 20 years.
No, I'm not totally doomed. I noticed that they completely receded in power based on our presence there, and they completely gained power based on our retreat. So I would wonder. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course they can't stand up to the American military. I'm not denying that, but I don't think it's that's a solution to Afghanistan. Like, just let them be like a permanent military base for the United States. Their population constantly fighting. It's not like things were peaceful with us there either. The ANA was constantly fighting and dying against the Taliban.
But they were markedly more peaceful with us there. And again, we don't really have a solution. Other than like stay and wait. Stay and wait is certainly not a solution. Right. Invade is way more of a solution than stay and wait. And I'm wondering, what would your response be if the Taliban start mass killing people? What would your response be if women start being stoned regularly again?
I imagine that's probably already happening. We just don't have video of it yet. So my answer would be, I don't think this is something we can fix right now. We can't fix the Uyghur Muslim genocide. We can't fix the death camps in North Korea. We can't fix what's happening in Turkmenistan.
We can't fix the Uyghur Muslim genocide because China is a nuclear power that very, very easily threatens world stability.
We can't invade We can't invade every non-nuclear country.
No, you can beat up the school bully without trying to punch out Conor McGregor too, right? Like, Afghanistan is way more manageable than any of these other examples you're pulling up.
It's clearly not, because we were there for 20 years with one objective, which was find bin Laden. That happened 15 years ago. And since then, we haven't even managed to purge the one major enemy fighting force in that region. Like, I don't think it's working. It's a temporary solution at best, and it's one which might be preventing a real solution. And we just can't fix every problem in the world. We can't just roll. Where in history would I point to for like a positive example of this? Like a country in a position similar to Afghanistan's, like an American military intervention for decades, like fixes its insurgency problem.
Well, I can point to like countries where American intervention is completely lacking, and it's exacerbated problems. Thinking Rwanda, where no intervention force allowed for a genocide that killed 800,000 people. Right? I don't want Afghanistan to turn into this for the better part of a century, where people are slaughtered en masse by the Taliban, which you already seem to agree is happening, and we all just sit on our hands and say, "Well, time will tell."
But we need to be able to solve these problems.
So you don't think this is a problem that can be solved militarily?
It seems not, no. Unless there's a full-scale invasion of Afghanistan, like a month after we leave.
Yeah, I think like if a terrorist organization has a lock on a country such that they're massacring people, a full-scale invasion is perfectly acceptable as an answer to oust them.
There are horrible things happening in countries all over the world. Why are we selecting this one as the focal point of our military aggression?
We should be selecting for any country where it's feasible to intervene and we can change it for the course of the good, for the better. In Afghanistan,
we haven't changed it, though.
We did. We absolutely did.
We didn't.
We did. You said Afghanistan was better in human rights. Afghanistan was better democratically.
And then it immediately fell apart. We gave the ANA an ungodly amount of. Yeah, we can't just turn every country on earth into the 51st through 267th states. Afghanistan, we gave them so much money. They had a higher military force, they had better equipment, and they got fucking rolled by the Taliban.
They got rolled because they had no US or NATO backing, because all the European allies they had left them.
No, it's because the underlying political structure failed them. The soldiers were good, but we put no meaningful effort, or if we did, we failed in a non-corrupt government. The nanosecond it wasn't being used to supplement American military force, their warlords, who we pretended were real politicians and leaders, just fled or completely broke down troop communication.
Is there no good man in Afghanistan we simply couldn't correct this problem for politically? Afghanistan will not be built as a republic in a day, right? And certainly won't be built as one in 20 years. It takes a lot of time to change like the structure of what is essentially a terrorist state into a feasible democracy. It takes a lot of work.
Can you sympathize with my belief that what we were doing there was a waste of time when with 20 years and trillions spent, they still instantly got rolled by the Taliban?
I sympathize with it, but I also feel like it betrays some other part of me, endemic to me, that says we have to stand up against injustice in the world.
But you have to do it in a way that works. But this American gung-ho, this attitude leads to further misery and suffering. This insistence on American military intervention as the only mechanism by which we can undo wrongs in the world.
It doesn't have to be American. It can be military intervention from any other power. And I don't even care if it's China or Russia or whoever with the shittiest human rights records. So long as human rights are preserved, so long as people are not massacred, I see
I'm more in favor of UN intervention than I am with United States intervention.
UN Army is made up of member nations. The United States Army is part of the UN Army.
But there is a difference between the UN occupying a territory and the US occupying a territory.
It was a NATO occupation.
NATO is not the UN. Those are two very different things.
What UN nations didn't join the occupation that you think should have joined the occupation?
It's not who joins, it's the symbolic meaning of the organization. NATO is an Soviet Cold War military org. The UN is supposed to be representative of the world governments. There's a pretty big difference between people running in there flying NATO and UN flags, you know?
Okay. Can I ask one more question from my homie SocDoneLeft?
Yeah.
Motherfucker just deleted his goddamn messages. Okay, well, I'll just recite what is his message from memory. SocDoneLeft wants to know that hypothetically, if Hitler, if the Nazis had carried on as a guerrilla force instead of, ceding government in Germany, would you have advocated for leaving Germany to the Nazis again as a guerrilla force?
If we occupied Germany after World War II ended for 20 years, never being able to elevate the Republic beyond a sham of a democracy, and never being able to meaningfully get rid of like the Nazi insurgents in the hills of northern Germany, then yeah, eventually I would say that military occupation would probably have to, be ceded. Because you know what the Nazis are going to be telling themselves? They're going to be recruiting people based on the perceived misery that U.S. occupation is causing in Germany. Or they would call it Jewish occupation. They would say, of course, oh, why do the Americans occupy our fatherland? It's because the Juden, et cetera, et cetera. And then they would recruit off alt-right forums online, and they would go live in the hills of Germany near Switzerland, and they would take pot shots at U.S. soldiers and shit. I don't know. It's like it's about efficacy to me. I just don't think this avenue works. Maybe economic investment or incentivization can work. Honest to God, I would prefer the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, like slowly inoculizing the Taliban to what we were doing.
It's just really like I'm not entirely sure paying Nazis to not do Nazi things is the feasible answer. Like they're essentially a mob boss if we see this. Right. Yeah, this doesn't have to be Nazi. I mean, just fascists in general. Same with the Taliban. Like, pay them to not.
We did that with Nazis, though. We hired a ton of them after World War II. Also, we do that all the time with unjust structures. Police used to be basically like mob gangs that were run by mayors in U.S. towns. We buy out bad institutions.
They weren't abolished; they were reformed, which is why I don't think you have to abolish like military intervention as an answer to fascism. You just reform it, make it better.
Well, but in this case, I don't think what we're doing works. But if the Chinese come into Afghanistan and Belt and Road Initiative the place, and the Chinese are like, hey, this whole genocide thing is bad optics, can you maybe stop it and just be like kind of generally sexist? Maybe the Taliban can be reformed. All I know is that what we were doing wasn't working. If China can turn them into some sort of despotic third world,
which we're highly doubtful of, right?
Well, eventually something's going to happen with the Taliban. States like that are unstable. The situation right now is not going to last long. I give you at most 2 years before there's fractional infighting in the existing Taliban, or there's another resurgence or resistance, or somebody plants a bomb in the office of one of the Taliban leaders, which leads to infighting. These are not like super well-regimented, well-organized, highly disciplined military officers. They're a bunch of fucking angry alt-righters, but in Afghanistan. Eventually the situation will change, and what we were doing wasn't working, so maybe the material conditions will allow things to progress to a more favorable.
The material conditions cannot improve without the finished construction of the Ring Road, and that cannot improve without a secure a secure Afghanistan, and that cannot be secured until the Taliban are out.
Well, we tried for 20 years and it didn't work. So, look, I mean, if you think you're Bill Dipperly and you can run the military and fix...
No, I'm no expert. Like, but in much the same way, like the answer to the Tuskegee experiment isn't to stop giving black people medicine, right? The answer to a bad occupation of Afghanistan isn't to just leave it to the Taliban. It's to just do it better.
I don't think those are comparable.
Well, I'm
all right, we gotta cut it, LSP.
All right, I'm sorry. Okay,
yeah,
I appreciate your time, Mr. Vaush. You have fun with your stuff.
It's okay. I love you. I hope that things get better in Afghanistan.
I do too. I really do. Peace, love, and rock and roll.
All right. Sorry about that. Just seems like we were going to go in circles because he. Yeah. All right. Let me see. Next, I actually do have a written question that's in multiple parts, but it's one that we promised we would ask when we pull this up.
I think war is bad.
Yeah. No, I think the crux of the disagreement there, right, is that he's saying that military action is working to a certain extent. The Taliban wasn't running the whole country. You're saying that's not a permanent solution. He wants to do both. Maybe you guys can talk more about that sometime.
I used to be more optimistic about the potential for U.S. military intervention. I used to think, for example, that we could like invade North Korea because like China postures about keeping them as a buffer state, but would they really be willing to risk war with the United States? Like, again, maybe not. And what's going on in North Korea is super, super bad. But the more I think about it, it really just seems like the U.S. military is the bluntest tool of all, and it can only be deployed in situations where nothing but corrosive, destructive, unambiguous violence can fix a problem. And sometimes it can. If you're fighting against another militarized government, then yeah, but the insurgency stuff is sociological. We're not destroying a government. We're trying to destroy an idea. The Taliban, we kill leader after leader, and then another one rises up, and it doesn't seem to change anything because it's not like it's not a government. It's not a structure, you know? Maybe that's what'll happen with the Taliban. Maybe now that they finally control all of Afghanistan, they'll turn into a de facto government and they'll sink and wallow into complacency the way governments do. And then if somebody takes out the leader, everything will fall apart. I don't know. Maybe we're making them weaker, you know?
Yeah, I guess we'll see if the Taliban liberalizes them. Anyway, we'll go on to the next question.
Well, get that woke Taliban. Absolutely.
Yeah, oh, God. Yeah. All right. So
by the way, I'm good to go. I'm good to go until 5 minutes before the end of the hour. I got to jump into a debate panel right after that, but you can run me up right to the hour.
All right. Excellent. Appreciate it. So next we have a 4-part question from somebody who's unfortunately one of my buddies, Peacecraft. You have stated that you are a moral anti-realist. And his interpretation of that is that you don't believe that morality either exists or that a moral claim seems to carry more weight than any other, and that morality is shaped by a dominant power structure. Yeah. Is that your understanding of it?
Yeah, well, I don't believe that morality is a definite and empirical thing that can be ascertained empirically. I don't think humans can make statements on the meta-ethical. So I'm a moral anti-realist because I think that the foundations of our ethical principles have to come fundamentally from subjective presuppositions.
All right. Second part of the question, you have stated in the past that you wish to win above all other things, and that you are willing to either lie, bend the truth, or manipulate optics in order to do so. You have arrived at this claim because in similar conversations you have stated that what you oppose is true evil. Is that your opinion as far as growing the left, that it's kind of a ends justify the means sort of situation? Is there a line for you there?
Ends justifying the means is just an affirmation of utilitarian ethics, which I am. The argument that I'm willing to lie to further my cause is itself a lie. I don't believe that. I think the closest I've ever come to explicitly stating that is simply wondering out loud if honesty is dooming us, because fascists can lie with impunity and they seem to gain strength so much more easily. But I've always believed really strongly in the importance of honesty. If you're dishonest, it makes it impossible to check the ideas of people above you or below you. And fascism can get away with lying because fascism's only aim is to destroy. Destroying is really easy, you know, but picking pieces up and putting them back together requires a pretty strong long-term plan. So I think you have to be honest for that.
Right on. So you would say then that you don't necessarily believe that lying, bending the truth, these sorts of things are okay for us to do for political optics.
Yeah, we shouldn't lie.
Okay.
We have to understand, of course, that the way in which we interpret honesty and dishonesty from others will always be informed by our subjective biases. You know, what is or is not a lie sometimes can be informed by, say, hyperbole. How hyperbolic can you be before it becomes a lie? What is acceptable as a joke? If you joke about something that's not true explicitly, but is true if you're speaking hyperbolically, was that a lie? If that's the case, is any joking at all lying if you're a political figure? I think that the answers to these questions are always going to be subjective in nature, and there's fair discourse within them. But I think it's possible to have answers that are more destructive than others to those questions.
All right. Based off your answer to that question, part 3 kind of doesn't make sense, but I can skip to part 4 because it's still.
No, wait, I want to hear what part 3 is.
Okay. All right. If this is the case, how can any interlocutor believe you? Unless the only thing they could believe is that you will act in any fashion in order to achieve any goal you subjectively wish for, regardless of its moral weight, and what will seem optically to be a better metric. It's how well it benefits you personally.
Here's the thing that makes me wonder, how can anyone say that I lie about my politics for optical gain when I'm constantly getting myself into optical trouble because I don't lie about it? I get canceled every 3 days because people ask me questions I have hard opinions on, and I bite the bullet on them. This happens to me dozens of times every year. So if I'm lying to save optical face, then I am doing a horrible job of it. I could have just been a SocDem with edgy USSR tier rhetoric who denied any radicalization and have gotten across these points way more effectively. But tragically, you know.
Right on. Do you want part 4 or?
Absolutely. Hit me up.
All right. If this is the case, in your conversation with Professor Flowers, why did you challenge her moral claims at all? Shouldn't you not believe or care about them? If your philosophy simply stems from power and its acquisition, shouldn't your only response to her about colonized individuals standing against another faction be, well, have fun and good luck? Have fun storming the castle unless it comes into conflict with my own goals and desires, at which point I will do whatever it takes to stop you.
Well, moral anti-realism isn't the same thing as moral nihilism. Moral anti-realism just means that your moral claims are based on subjective presuppositions, whereas moral nihilism means you legitimately don't believe there's any morality. Or to put it another way, I think our understanding of gender is founded upon subjective presuppositions, but I still think gender exists. I mean, it's a thing. It's a sociological construct that I talk about all the time. So, it reminds me a bit of the conservative argument where people are like, you're talking about race. I thought race isn't real. And they cross their arms. There's a big difference between acknowledging the subjectivity of something and believing it doesn't exist at all. The reason I didn't like what Professor Flowers had to say is because my subjectively determined axiomatic beliefs make me very uncharitable towards advocacy for ethnic cleansing. So I'm willing to die on that hill,
All right on. Just so you know what we're getting into there, that is a gentleman who likes Starship Troopers for the reasons that Sargon the God likes that show. Anyway.
Oh, that's nice. Okay. Only the best from that community. Anyway, I hope that they probably don't believe a fucking word that I said, because when you're asking people questions like, how do you expect people to believe you when you believe lying is good? Then anything you answer to that is probably not going to land, but yeah. Sorry, go on.
No worries. I think that next we have Nava, if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question on voice.
Yep, sure. So I know that you are generally pro-gun and against blanket gun bans, but when you talk about assault weapons or whatever, do you have any different prescriptions on blanket bans of those specifically, or no?
Yeah, I think I'm more against blanket bans of quote assault weapons. They just crime just doesn't seem to be done with them, the vast majority of violent crimes are done with handguns because they can be concealed. Whereas if you walk anywhere with a rifle, it's pretty obvious that you're carrying, The mass shootings tend to happen with those rifles, but they're a really small percentage of overall gun deaths. And the kind of person who's willing to do a mass shooting or shoot up a school is probably also capable of acquiring the firearms they are looking for one way or another. It's not exactly hard to do straw purchases here in the US, and there are millions of rifles. So even if you ban them, if a person wanted to shoot up a school, they're probably going to die doing that, right? So probably not that much extra effort to go looking around for a straw purchase on Craigslist or something,
Yeah, based, honestly, I agree.
All right. If that's going to be all, I think next we have Samantha. You wanted to ask something?
Hey, Vaush. Thanks for coming and doing this, first and foremost.
Howdy.
But this is going to be a very, very stupid, simple question. I wanted to know the differences of people or what your perceived differences between people like me and, say, Hunter Avalon, who come from I come from a far right, alt-right background. And people like Lauren Southern, and what's the differences, and why is the community willing to engage with me and Hunter, but I notice a lot of the community doesn't want to engage with people like Lauren, and then there's a few other people in this space that just people refuse to engage with.
It's just about the outcomes, I think. Well, I think lots of people are engaging with Southern. It's just people on the left who don't like it. The real difference, Hunter Avalon was really, really sincere, When I talked with him and debated him, it was explicitly a point on disagreement, and he was a huge public figure at the time. And then when he moved over to the left, I talked with him and he seemed incredibly sincere about it, and I was very happy to see that change of mind. Lauren's movement comes off really insincere to me, because as far as I can tell, she hasn't moved over on anything, publicly disavowed any of the old stuff that she said. She hasn't addressed any of the old talking points, because if you were the person responsible for the whole great replacement thing, which is now like central to Nazi and white nationalist discourse. I'd think that if you moved over, you'd probably be like incredibly willing to apologize for that. I mean, you'd be doing big videos and be like, oh God, I'm so sorry, and all the people I hurt, etc. Because there's a difference between Lauren Southern and like your average conservative. There's a gap between these things. So it doesn't seem like she's sincere with the movement. And I also don't think she cares about anything she's talking about. She was recently debating like trans athlete stuff with Jangles and basically admitted she didn't care about the science. It seemed like she lied about some stuff debating Destiny recently. It just seems like overall this is a very shallow attempt at getting back in the career space. She's still alt-right, or at least adjacent to it, and she knows she'll get banned from YouTube if she acts that way. So she instead just postures on other like culture war issues that conservatives care about. But I just think she's trying to build a career back. Hunter didn't. Hunter's career tanked because he moved left.
Yeah, and so Lauren Southern's statistics on that she tanked too. She got disowned by a lot of the alt-right. But like I'm thinking it's like a weird comparison because like where Hunter moved to the left, right? Or like a lot farther left than most people, like farther left than me. Lauren never said she was moving left. And I think a lot of people have the misconception that she was moving left, and she had never stated that. And the other thing, like, I don't think
Lauren... Are we just propping up the career of like a failed alt-righter then? I mean, isn't that bad? Like, I don't want to just like give free attention or whatever.
Well, here's the thing, and here's how I look at it. Real quick, I'm pretty sure Great Replacement was done by a French dude. Grand Replacement, I think that was Renaud something French. I don't know. But I just see it kind of like detrimental. So like, even though I'm not like lefty, right? I still like it when people are moving away from extremist positions or like white supremacy or Nazi rhetoric, right? I think that's good. Moving away from extremism is a positive thing. And I just find it kind of weird for people
Did you just say she wasn't moving away from it?
No, moving away from extremism, not moving to the left. She's just moving to more moderate conservative position. Which is fair.
The only practical consequence of engaging with her is propping up her career. And I think that she's essentially a disingenuous white nationalist. I just don't see what the benefit is. I engage with Hunter Avallone because when we disagreed, he was a large figure and there was value in debunking his points because he actually believed them. I don't think she believes the point she argues now. I think she cares about the white nationalist stuff. Okay. And likewise, I couldn't like platform Hunter. He was 20 bajillion times my size. Yeah. But now with the Lauren Southern stuff, I mean, I like what's in it for us? You know, what's the benefit, I guess?
Well, I just see like I like people moving away from extremist positions. I mean, I didn't move away from mine with people refusing to interact with me or just turning me away or whatever. Like the reason I moved away from my extremist positions is largely in part due to Spectre here that's actually in the call with us. Helped me move away from like a lot of my more extreme, irrational, really extreme problematic positions.
Or is she just like gone to dog whistling them? Because moving away implies a disavowal of your previous opinions, but she hasn't done that. Like, would you celebrate Tim Pool no longer being anti-vax on YouTube because YouTube will ban his channel? Like, she's only doing this because she would have gotten banned if she hadn't changed her rhetoric.
Well,
that's not really moving away.
I think Lauren is smarter than Tim Pool. I think that's most rocks on the ground are smarter than Tim Pool. But what
that's a cockroach trying to hide under a fridge because the light's been turned on.
What I think is she's grown so used to, and I think a lot of the right and some of the left has grown into like always memeing too close to the sun, trying to be like super edgy, and she's got to understand, or what she's failing to understand is if you're trying to meme about your old beliefs, that's actually doing more harm, and it's not making, you know, it doesn't make you look any better. Like if you're trying to say that, hey, I don't believe these things anymore, and then just kind of like memeing at it again, it doesn't really help your position, if you know what I mean. Yeah, but I was just trying to
actually move your positions.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, like, yeah, do you think it's God?
I don't know how sincere you are. I don't know how sincere you are coming into this, but what Lauren Southern is doing is the most obvious and objective example of a white nationalist trying to hastily rebrand to rebuild a career that I've ever seen. I've never seen a more transparent, shameless attempt for a person with radical right views to make themselves palatable to a new audience. I just don't understand how so many other people can't see that. It's not like she was like, it's not like a shoe on head thing where she was an anti-SGW or whatever. Like, she was one of the leading figures in white nationalist rhetoric online. You don't get to walk away from that and just start talking about trans bathroom issues half-heartedly and just like get it all ignored or dropped. It's a meaningful
that's
thing.
fair. No, I agree 100% with you. Yeah, just kind of, I just kind of wanted to see like your opinion on what the difference between like some of us who were from the alt-right moving more towards like now I'm a centrist or center right or whatever the fuck you want to call it, post-partisan. I don't give a shit anymore. And people like Lauren, and there's a few others in the space that are kind of moving away from that or saying they're moving away from that rhetoric. So I just want to get your opinion on it.
I guess you have to see it, but like it's not hard to walk away from the white nationalist stuff. All you have to do is, you know, criticize your old stuff meaningfully and indicate why it was wrong. But
no, that's fair. Thank you. Thank you for answering my question.
No worries. Yeah, hold on. Wait, before the next person, 1 second. My camera's wobbling. I think I'm right here. 1 second. I'll leave. 1 second. Right here. Just adjusted the thing. No biggie.
Can you hear me?
I think he's adjusting his camera really quick, but
I just wanted to make. I just wanted to make
all right,
sure.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you're good to go. Next we have Samson here for a question.
Oh wait,
Sam Cedar.
No, what a fucking nightmare. Samson, well, I used my real name. I outed myself as a Vaush fan. Cringe. Anyway, Vaush, big fan, obviously. I just wanted to tell you that I wanted to ask you about market socialism, which you have made me a skeptical believer in. The reason why is I'm skeptical of this is because, a quick background on me. Personal, but whatever. I was hit by a drunk driver and was left paralyzed when I was fresh out of college. I had a $150K a year job. I was a super capitalist. You know, minorities are lazy, typical hog mentality. After my accident, I was broke. I was put into a nursing home due to homelessness and had to fight tooth and nail for a subsidy for housing and had to fight even harder to find affordable housing that accepted that subsidy, which, along with your content, made me super empathetic to people's struggles. Coming as a white, straight, cis male, actually I'm like half Latino, but I'm kind of like Destiny. I'm white passing, but less cringe. My skepticism is with market socialism is that how would it make life more equitable for those unable to work? Those that don't have any means of production to seize, those that with no democratic power in any workplace because they don't work, they don't have a workplace, how would that system benefit them when there is still a profit motive that exists?
It can't. The only thing that can do that is a strong welfare state, which is supplemental to market socialism. But market socialism does not solve the problem of people whose relationship to commodity production is atypical. In that case, you would need to rely on a welfare state. I would argue that a market socialist society is more likely to have a good welfare state because any society which cares enough about the rights of workers to elevate democratic access within the workplace would probably also care about things like a universal basic income or incredibly robust disability assistance. But I would consider these to be things that need to be fought for in parallel.
Okay, so, and this is probably getting a little too major specific with my situations, which I don't really want to like tackle on too hard. So being this bound to a wheelchair, I needed medical equipment. Medical equipment that is commodified, and since there is very low demand and it's a necessity, these companies tend to mark up the price really, really, really high. That technically only very, very wealthy disabled people can afford. For example, I have a lift tracking system that is the only thing that allows me to get into my tub to take a shower. And thankfully, the Cerebral Palsy Foundation actually subsidized this for me. It was a $60,000 job. I would want to know how a company that is run by the workers with the same profit incentive, since it's still commodified, they wouldn't lower the price just to be nice guys. They still would want to make money, correct?
Mm-hmm. That could not fix your problem either. Market socialism is something I care about because I think it's a good way of fixing some problems while maintaining the basic economic structure of our society.
And plus you're utilitarian, and in effect, it would benefit more people than it would not benefit like someone like me, which is totally fine because the
problem is that the healthcare industry isn't something I want made democratic. The healthcare industry should be nationalized. Yeah. Yes, that's an instance where I don't even think market socialism is applicable because healthcare, proper medical care, is inelastic. Right. Yeah, its demand is inelastic. Whether it costs $1 or $1 million, you need medical care, and for that reason,
housing as well.
Yeah, exactly. Same with housing, same with food. And for that reason, people will pay anything, which means the supply-demand graph breaks. You can no longer rely on basic market forces to regulate those industries because there are other industries where the supply-demand graph does make things a little easier for us. Electronics keep getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper due to the availability of materials, advancing technology, a large amount of demand, et cetera, competition between different firms. There are elements of market economies that work, at least in some ways, but with the medical industry, it doesn't. So Medicare for all would be something that I would want passed alongside. If there was a democratic, privately owned medical system in America and market socialism, I would think that was pretty much just as bad as having it completely privately owned.
Okay, I just want to throw one last caveat because I want to give other people. I know SocDoneLeft's coming up next, and I like him, so I want to give him some time. I just want to say that in the I lost my train of thought, but I wanted to say that when it comes to the welfare system, my problem is that I have marketable skills. I can work. Thing is that if I do work, I lose my health care. I lose a lot of benefits that no company would give me because it's too fucking expensive. They wouldn't offer me health care. I think, and I obviously you agree with me, it has to be a wholesale reconstruction, reimaginative way of dealing with people that are disabled, that can work on computers, not need to do intensive labor, that could literally pay millions, billions in taxes because there are plenty. I've met them. And I just think that those conversations are not spoken of because, the people with disabilities are a minority. It's not a big deal. And I know that there are bigger, I would say trans issues are bigger than people with disabilities issues because they face much harsher and much more discriminative situations in society. But I think that that's a very important conversation to be had. And by the way, I love your content. You really made me a more empathetic person along with my situation that has passed. And I really enjoy everything you've done. And I hope you keep going for a long time.
Thank you. I'll try my best and be well. These are issues that have to be fought for in tandem.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
All right. So I think we have time for two more questions. And we have SDL and Merrick for that, so I'm not going to take up any more time. I'll just let SDL jump into it.
Hey, Vaush. So I guess related to the previous conversation, one thing I wanted to mention is, have you heard of the term decommodification of labor?
Of labor, not specifically.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting idea that comes from, if you ever see the Medlock post, this guy goes to Epstein Anderson. One of his big ideas for a good welfare state is that it decommodifies labor. Whether you're working in the labor market or not, you should be able to have a reasonably high, reasonably luxurious living standard. So that's one of his standards for what socialism should include, whether it be market or whatever kind.
Okay, well, I mean, I think that's something I agree with on principle.
Sure. It's a useful way, I think, to frame it, that you're literally decommodifying labor. No longer do you have to sell your labor to survive, is the idea. Yeah. Okay, second meme. You talked about nationalizing as different than like democratic control of firms. So you do agree that like nationalized firms or like Medicare for All should be internally democratically run, or no?
Yeah, that would be ideal. But I think that with the medical industry being that it is necessary and that its products are inelastic in their demand, I think that democratization is superseded in importance by decommodification.
Sure. That might be true. Sometimes people seem to treat nationalization as like totally opposite of having democratic control within the organization. And so I think it is important to note that like, I think one of the reasons a lot of nationalizations failed, like in Britain and other countries, is they were World War II era nationalizations, which were not democratic. They were just run by the central government. And so there was no one in the institution who was really tied to the running of it, like really, really tied to the culture of it, who would fight against the privatization because it was all controlled at the center. So I think it's a strong argument for like very democratic nationalizations.
Yeah, I shouldn't have implied that they were antithetical to each other.
I mean, I just can't believe that you would speak imprecisely on an AMA stream, 3 hours in? I think it's deeply unacceptable, actually.
Yeah, we have a debate panel after this one. We'll see how bad my rhetoric gets there.
Good luck fighting with your mush brain, buddy. All right, third thing. This one, slight actual fighting. So do you agree that like more firearm availability in the house generally means more suicide, more homicide?
Yes.
Okay. So, but you want to like maintain guns as like a way to protect against tyranny, right?
I think that because we already have guns here in this country now, I think that their ownership can be employed in a more reasonable and meaningful way. If guns are to be generally available in this country, yes, I think that leftists should have them, certainly, liberals too. But I don't think that's the principal reason why I'm opposed to gun bans in this country, more because it's politically inefficacious and it would sap what might otherwise be an effective sort of legislative term.
Sure. I mean, blanket bans are probably inefficacious. I think like it's only like 30% of people want to overturn the Second Amendment. So yeah, definitely. Though a lot of pretty extreme gun control has like total support. I think people support like 60 to 40, taking away guns from people with a diagnosed mental illness. Like people are kind of crazy for this shit.
Yeah, see, I don't like that one very much.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not in favor of it all. It's just political efficacy is not always like, I guess more idealistically, what do you think the argument for retaining guns is if there is one? Like in an ideal society where you don't have to worry about political efficacy, would you maintain widespread household gun ownership?
I guess it depends on how stable I think the society is, you know? In an increasingly destabilizing society, I do think that individuals should own firearms because it's a necessary component to protecting their neighborhoods and warding off bands of marauders looking to, I don't know, eat the squirrels in their neighborhood or something. In a society which is right, in a society which is perfectly and eternally stable, then I would say no. But given the way the world's been going lately, I don't know. I think it's kind of a responsible thing to hold on to. It's also contextual because I feel like those marauding gun bandits are probably going to happen more frequently here in America than, say, the UK, you know? It's difficult to say because I feel like so much of the reason why I think people should own guns is informed by the fact that people already have guns. I could say we could take away the guns, but how effectively could we do that? Would we just leave them in the hands of people who I want them to have the least? Or would it just be, can I magically snap them all away? If I could, then I suppose. But at that point, I'm not entirely sure whether or not we would have fixed the underlying problems that would have led me to defend the political efficacy of guns. It's really tough for me to say. I'm not an evangelist for firearms. I just think a lot of people are irrationally paranoid of them.
Well, let me take your evangelism, or lack thereof, and convert it to librarianism. I've got a solution which will solve all of your concerns about the collapse of society and protecting civilian freedom. It's called the gun library. Don't speak too loudly. The basic idea is if you think that it's important to have guns for community defense, whether for freedom or the collapse of society, then that's where the gun should be located, in some communal center, communal gun stores, communal gun ownership. And so you need the gun library. You want your gun, you go in with your gun license and you check it out, just like you check out a book. Simple as that.
I don't know why you're laughing. I'm totally okay with that. It would also cut down on suicide.
It's her fault.
Whose fault?
She keeps laughing about the gun library, which is a totally legitimate idea. All I want is everyone to go with their gun license, not speak too loudly. The librarian will shoot you and check out your guns. Okay?
I call them community armories, but the biggest, a huge chunk of the deaths that you get with firearms are crimes of passion and suicide. Neither of which can happen if it's locked up in an armory, right? I mean, technically, if you want, so, because like if anyone wants to kill themselves with a gun, it's super easy to. All you have to do is find a friend, and then you go over to a gun range, and then because you have a friend with you, they'll let you rent a gun, and then you shoot yourself. But it never happens. It never happens. And the only reason for that is because oftentimes the urge to kill yourself is such an immediate and impulsive thing that actually acting on the logical steps to do that is, I mean, by the time you're even in the car, the urge is past, and thank God for that. So yeah, I think the community armories would be a great idea.
Sure. I just wanted to propose it. Like, I guess I see it as possibly the most like radical gun control proposal that's politically feasible, because it would pass like Second Amendment muster. It would pass the muster of like, oh, I need guns to protect my freedoms or concerns about the collapse of society. But it would like avoid a huge number of the homicides, because like you're talking about, one of the big reasons the United States has a higher rate of homicide is intimate partner violence in the U.S. gets converted to intimate partner homicide. Someone's in a fit of rage, they take the gun and convert what might have been a beating to a killing. And so like I get I'm just trying
I agree with that, and guns aren't really useful for home defense anyway, as the data goes, so that's not really the operative issue there. The only thing I'd say though, I think you could probably make a strong argument for personal possession of firearms in one's home if you have a CCW or CCL, sorry. I think that there are probably some people in some positions for which like it could be fairly reasonably defended that they could keep a gun at their place. Without it being a threat. Concealed carry license, chat.
Well, it sounds like you have been utterly red-pilled on gun libraries. Okay, Comrade Vaush. That's really all I got for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. You two take care, okay?
Thank you.
Really quick, before the next person, I actually looked it up because I was curious. And look, method. We conducted text searches of 63,710 firearm suicides in the 16 states participating in the National Violent Death Reporting System from 2004 to 2015 to identify those occurring at public shooting ranges. Results, a total of 118, or 0.18%, occurred at a shooting range. That is incredibly low. Yeah, it seems like just making it so that a person can't get their hands on a gun for like 20 minutes is all it takes to massively decrease the likelihood of suicide by firearm. Like just putting any barrier there, you know? Sorry,
No, I mean, that's the entire argument for it. Just making it slightly harder to do is enormous benefits.
Yeah. Maybe all gun safes should have a 20-minute lock. You know what I mean? Like you punch it in, you turn it, and then it like a little timer beeps down. Then after it opens, save some people. Sorry. Yeah. I'm alive, right? I'm not dead.
Let me take. You want me to take over?
Who the fuck donated $1,000 to the fucking GoFundMe? I'll deal with you people later. Yes, hello.
Hey, I'm back. Sorry, I was laughing and interrupting when he was trying to talk about gun libraries.
That's okay.
Hi, Vaush. How you doing?
Doing good. How about you?
Oh, it's pretty good over here. So I guess this is like kind of a two-parter. So my first question... It's got to be
quick, though, because after this is done, I got to skedaddle.
Okay. Do you think that the current trend that we see with people being ultra far left, like being Maoists and Stalinists and stuff in their 20s and 30s, do you think that this is a fad, kind of like how we saw with like really extreme right wing positions being really popular back in like 2015, 2016? And do you think, or what do you think is going to happen if you do think it is a fad whenever it ends?
I think it's a fad. Yeah, I think it's a fad caused by doomerism. The thing that seems to unite so many of these usually very poorly educated radical lefties is one, a hatred of America, and two, a hatred of reformism, unless it's being done by non-Americans, in which case it's based. It seems to me like a lot of them are just really black-pilled on the efficacy of the democratic process, so they turn to the most hyperbolically radical alternative possible, defending positions because they're not liberal. And I don't think that's functionally the same as the alt-right, because the alt-right seems to have emerged not from doomerism, but more optimism, that the alt-right they all linked arms at around the same time and realized there were more of them than they thought, because their speech had been basically impossible to find online beforehand. And they thought they were going to have like this big tidal wave. And you know what I mean? Like their rhetoric seemed more optimistic. It used to, not now. That bubble has popped. Now all the remaining alt-righters are hardcore doomers. Richard Spencer voted for Biden. Nick Fuentes is in the fucking dark zone of the internet now.
Like in the shadow realm.
Yeah, in the shadow realm. So many of them got deplatformed from social media, you know? So like they're in the doomer zone now. Right now with the lefties, I think what they really need is a good project. I want them to touch grass. They need to get behind some real empirical current political project that actually means something. And they need to go outside and they need to make friends, because I know they don't have any fucking friends. If they did, they wouldn't be spending so much time on Twitter. They need to make some friends and just recontextualize their life, because I think a lot of these people are borderline suicidal cases. And the reason they idealize revolutionary aesthetics so much is because they fantasize about giving their lives for the revolution, so that hypothetical future people. Yeah, because they want a sense of purpose that badly, which is similar to the alt-right, because that lack of a sense of purpose does tend to unite radicals. And the problem is, like, it's really dumb. It's dumb for 20 reasons. We're not getting a revolution right now. And if we did, they would be useless, because they're all limp-wristed, emaciated 20-something TikTokers who couldn't hold or use a gun if their life depended on it. So like, if that's not happening, that's why they don't go outside, which is, by the way, what you need to do to train for an uprising. So yeah, just when the bubble pops, I think that a lot of them are going to go the Chapa route, which is that they're just going to be like hyper doomers that just want to sit on the sidelines and smirk at anyone making an effort, you know?
Do you think that that's kind of like where we get these anonymous irony, like shitposty, vaguely associated with left sentiment accounts from? And like, is that sort of this like post-enthusiasm left?
Yeah, and it's incredibly frustrating, because they were literally, in the strict sense of the word, counter-revolutionaries. There's real left organizing efforts being made in this country and around the world, and they are dragging down at them as a weight from the feet, because they are so opposed to taking credit for and taking responsibility for the consequences of any actual real life movement, you know? It's super, super sad, but I don't know. They're all like sad cases anyway, so we should probably feel bad for them more than anyone else.
Yeah, I mean, okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think we got to cut it there, because you got to.
Yeah, Merrick, I'll talk to you during the fundraiser, I assume, unless you ignored the message. Yeah.
No. I'll be there tomorrow.
Perfect. And do you mind if we take 30 seconds to go ahead and plug the Discord really quick?
Of course, please.
All right, perfect. So my name is Spectre. I'm an admin here on the Twitch Politics Discord. We basically just take all the different political Twitch communities, throw them in one Discord. We host AMAs every other week. I think 2 weeks from now we're doing Aristocracy, who your community may be familiar with. I'm just going to go ahead and put the link in your website chat. And yeah, thank you very much for coming, comrade. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I'm happy to do it again in the future. I'm sorry about the little schedule mix-up at the end there. That's 100% my fault. In fact, we can do another one after the dust settles a little bit, sort of compensate for because I think a good AMA is 3 hours, you know, so just saying.
Yeah, no, we'd love to have you back anytime. I think we'll just go ahead and get Tom to set that up in the future. All right. I know you got a big debate panel to go to, so I don't want to keep you too long. Have a good one.
Yeah, got to run on that. Thank you.